Welcome to the week number 10 overview for managerial economics here at Rutgers University in Camden. This week we are only reviewing one chapter, and that is chapter 14, managerial decision making under uncertainty. Make sure you realize that one of the reasons why this was set apart as a chapter that we take the entire week to review because some people find some difficulty with this. So make sure you don't fall in the illusion that this week is going to be easier because there's only one chapter covered. This chapter can be quite difficult for some students, so make sure you spend the appropriate amount of time on this chapter. The first section that is reviewed in the textbook is a section on assessing risk. And make sure you realize what is meant by risk and also how people deal with risk. The notion of probability, how probability is the likelihood of something occurring. People can use different pieces of information to come up with this probability, historical information to calculate these probabilities. Also realizing that if an individual doesn't have the detailed information necessary to come up with an estimate of the probability, they can come up with subjective estimates based upon the information they have available to them. Know what an expected value is and how to calculate the expected value. Additionally, make sure you understand what the variance is and how to calculate the variance from this section. Make sure you have a good understanding of the differing attitudes towards risk. All right. So when people choose between a risky option and a non-risky option, it reveals something about their attitudes towards risk. Realize that most people are risk averse, and they will choose a riskier option only if the expected value is sufficiently higher than that of the less risky option. You can have people who are risk neutral, and they are people who choose whichever option has the higher rate of return because they don't really care about risk. And there are people who are risk takers or risk preferring individuals, and they choose the riskier option even if it has a lower rate of return because they like risk and are willing to give up some expected return to take on that risk. Realize that an individual's utility function reflects their attitudes towards risk, and have an idea of what expected utility is and the use of expected utility when dealing with risk. Then the chapter goes over ways to reduce risks. We realize some people will avoid risk altogether, and when they cannot be avoided, they take actions that will lower the probability of any particular bad event occurring. Realize that this also relates to investing. So people will collect information so they can make better choices. So when people make investments, they diversify by, for example, the example I oftentimes use in class is when Enron went under. A lot of people had all of their retirement stuck into Enron stock. So when Enron went under, their retirements disappeared. Those individuals would have been diversified if they had had Enron stocks, but had stocks in other companies and other businesses, other types of assets, etc. Also, realize that insurance companies offer a means for people to diversify because they are pooling risks among individuals. Have a notion of what fair insurance is, and also realize that because insurance companies have to make money, they got to cover their costs, they got to pay salaries, workers, they got to get a rate of return on their investment. They offer insurance that is less than fair. Also, investing under uncertainty. Realize the factors that influence whether or not a person makes an investment or puts money into a particular investment. That depends on how uncertain the payoff is, the expected rate of return on that investment, the individual's attitude towards risk, the interest rate, and the cost of altering the probabilities of various outcomes. So make sure you understand that the decision-making process to invest and the factors that influence whether or not an individual actually invests. And the final section in this chapter is about behavioral economics and uncertainty. Realize that economists and also psychologists have identified behavior of people when they face uncertainty that is not consistent with the theory of expected utility. Realize that people's choices may be biased because they are trying to come up with estimates of outcomes, and this might not be accurate, and they can be different and cause there to be differences between maximizing expected utility. Also in this section, there's a theory about prospect theory. Make sure you understand that and the implications of prospect theory.